Thank you. So good morning and welcome to June's REACT Learning Series session. My name is Vanessa Brewer. I am the Regional Interagency Council Program Administrator, and my co-host is Lee Taylor. Lee is the State Interagency Council Program Administrator, and we work at the Department for Behavioral Health, Developmental, and Intellectual Disabilities. We want to thank you for joining us today for our last REACT Learning Series session and for your support with the learning series across the years. We do invite you to stay tuned for future learning opportunities that are focused on enhancing support for parent and youth voice. Um, Moving on to today's session. Today's session is titled From Data to Action, Strengthening School Connectedness to Reduce Chronic Absenteeism. And our presenters are Ashley Gates and Lisa Henry from the Kentucky Department of Education. And before I turn it over to Ashley and Lisa for them to introduce themselves, I'd like to go over just a few housekeeping items. This workshop will be recorded and posted on the REACT's Resources and Trainings channel, and we'll put that link in the chat box a little bit later. Also, if you haven't already, please mute your mics. If you have questions during the session, please feel free to put them in chat or raise your hand. We've spoken with Ashley and Lisa prior to the session, and they are comfortable with addressing questions as you have them, so don't feel like you've got to hold them till the end if you would like to have them addressed as they come up. Also, a session evaluation link will be posted in the chat box towards the end of the session, so please take a moment to complete it at that time. And as always, certificates of attendance are available by request. You can email me if you need one of those, and I'll put my email in the chat box. And so without further delay, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Ashley and Lisa.
Thank you so much. We are so excited to be here today for not just because it's Friday, obviously, but because we are excited to share some ongoing, some kind of what's been going on, what's currently going on, and what can we do to keep moving forward, right? So I'm going to start sharing my screen. I feel like that's been like the conditioned front load for people with virtual. Here we go. All right. My name is Ashley Gates. I am on the Persistence to Graduation team here at KDE, and my teammate Lisa Henry is joining me today. She'll introduce herself. But we are part of the Persistence to Graduation team comprised of 4. We are superhero women. Christina Watford is our insights and data guru. Judy Vanderhaar is our any and all. I'm sure many of you have been part of trainings that they've had before. They are incredible, and we are glad to be part of this. My lens, through which I operate, is from a behavior coach perspective. I hail to you from Jessamine County, the Providence School, where I served as a behavior coach and speducator for almost a decade. And what we're going to be talking about today hits home for me in a lot of ways with my kids, not my students, my kids, because once they're mine, they're always mine. I know you all understand that. And so just really excited to share with you kind of the journey that we've been on since arriving at KDE. I've been there since January. So some of the stuff that I've been working on is what we now get to present to you today. So thank you for having us. And I'll go ahead and let my colleague introduce herself.
Good morning. My name is Lisa Henry, and as Ashley said, we are with the Persistence to Graduation team at KDE. I am so excited to be with you this morning and to learn from you and with you. Just to give you a little bit of my background, I was a classroom teacher for over 20 years. I started my career out in Bullitt County, moved to Cleveland, Ohio for several years, and then have been back in Kentucky for the last 14, where I spent my time working at an alternative program for kids who are sent out of their regular A1 schools or coming back from DJJ facilities or residential facilities. And so again, my background, a lot like Ashley, is we've worked with these kids that we're talking about this morning. And so we want to just give some strategies and hear from you, best practices that you're using and what you see is helping. And hopefully we can all work together to help Kentucky students.
We do want to encourage you to scan this QR code. I realized that I put it up there and I just talked and then direct you all to it. So if you don't mind just signing in with us, we'd like to know just who our people are, who are who are learning with us, who's part of this experience, and just where you're located. It's a very brief kind of two-part, if you will, but I will have that up again at the end for those that are kind of coming in as we get going. So why are you here? We're here today to talk about chronic absenteeism. I know that's a hot topic, but I really hope that by the end of today, you don't talk about, or you're not just associating the content and the learning experience we have today with chronic absenteeism, because that is what we're seeing. That's the symptom, but now what's the solution? Okay. So our time today is going to be pretty straightforward. We're not here to tell you what to do. We're here to share what's been going on, what's working for some people, share some strategies, and hear from your journey and your experiences and what you all are going through. And so we'll do introductions from you all just briefly, and then chronic absenteeism definition, just kind of make sure we're all on the same foundation for where we're going. Give you some brief legislative updates. I know that there's been a lot of talk about what has gone into effect this year, but what does it really mean, right? We know that it's in effect, but what does that actually look like? We'll have some data highlights and just some chat surrounding that, and then we'll get into our tiered approach and strategies. And I say tiered approach and strategies, and I don't want that to feel sticky or we're going to lean into MTSS all day. We are, but we're going to lean into it and we're going to experience it in a different way. And then if we have time to show you all our Persistence to Graduation Team website and resource toolkit, we will. Otherwise, we'll drop that link in the chat for you all to have. And as Vanessa so graciously expressed, we will be moderating the chat, kind of a call and response. So if at any point you have questions, please drop them. If you have comments, if you want to unmute yourself, please, this is a safe space, safe environment. We are very much wanting to learn about what's going on from your all's perspective and lens, because again, we can only bring in ours, but we want to share what that looks like and then see how we can move forward with it. So without further ado, some intros and temperature check, if you will. If you don't mind, drop it in the chat, or if you want to mute yourself, I like to talk and listen to people. So who are you? What district or school, maybe organization that you're part of? Maybe you're just a community member. That's an organization, okay? And then tell us your role. And then answer, if you'd like, the icebreaker question. We've been in a mental health first aider training this week, and so challenge by choice is what we have been conditioned to support. And so please know that at any point throughout this, you don't have to participate, but we would love for you to, because it's just going to keep this whole flow kind of going. So in the chat or unmute yourself, introduce, and icebreaker question: what word or emoji, yes, emoji, captures how you're feeling about today's topic? And it's okay to put a question mark if you're like, I don't even know. And if you're like me, I am an emoji. So I like that. I'm really excited because I can't wait to just share all of what's been going on in our state and how we can tap into that and use that a little bit more. So drop in the chat, or if you'd like to unmute yourself.
I'm Pat Dubert. I am a parent rep on the REAC. I sit on some fair committees, about 5 of them throughout the county of Bern County and Warren County. And I'm a foster parent of 51 years and happy today.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Oh, I love it. Thank you for being here. Got in chat. Let's see. Carrie Goodman. Feeling hopeful. Ooh, I like hopeful. We are hope dealers. I'll go ahead and let us all know that we are hope dealers. That's why we're here, right? We want to know more and figure out how to use it to help our communities and help our kids. AOC, bless you, AOC. Thank you so much, Laura, for being here. Thank you, Carla, for being here. Thank you, Sarah. Sorry, y'all are, keep it coming. Beautiful. We like to just know too who's in the room with us, because I'll be honest, I front loaded with Vanessa and Lee earlier, and Lisa has heard me say this all week. I am in a pivot mode. That's my word of the week. It should be for 2025, because I feel like in education we're always, flexible and fluid, right? No, I'm like pivot, right? It's not a barrier, it's not an obstacle, it's a pivot. So now what? So today's presentation, based on in conversation, we might have to pivot, and I want to, right? I want to lean into that based on what you all need. Wow. Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Kate. Thank you, Jamie. And if I pronounce anybody's names wrong, it's okay to correct me. Thank you, Deanna.
Is it okay if I go ahead and just speak and tell you?
Please, girl.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So my name's Amanda Oliver. I am with Penny Ryle Region, REAC. I am the parent representative on that, as well as I'm a parent advocate with our CCC, Community Collaboration for Children, both regional and state. And I sit on the Parent Advisory Council's core team. And then Icebreaker, the emoji that captures right now is the sleepy emoji. Yesterday, I just wrapped up a 3-day day camp for 6th through 12th graders. We had 30
Bless
students.
you.
And praise God, we really reached all of these kids and they had the best time. We had a full-blown concert for them. So
That's awesome. I could feel the energy, like just that whole, that's incredible. So Sleepy, we'll take you, Sleepy. Please feel free to unmute your mic. I know you all are being really respectful and raising your hands. Thank you. I'm like zoned in on the chat. Hello, Kelly. Hello, Melanie. Hello, Sharon. Awesome. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and thank you all for being here. I'm an innate PBIS person, so I always like to thank everybody with their first names. But just to make sure that we have all the time that we want to get to hear from you and share things, we're going to go ahead and just kind of get into it. All right. So what are we here for? All right. Chronic absenteeism sounds like this really great word, right? We've heard it for some of us for decades, some of us for the last 5 years. Some of you, this might be the first time you're hearing about it, and that's okay, because I'm going to go through just what is chronic absenteeism. Because for those of you that are aware, there is a difference between the federal definition and then what we here in Kentucky use. And I do want to pause on that because that can get tricky when people are having conversations around chronic absenteeism because of the federal difference between ours and their definition. So if you're like me, this slide is really pretty and it's really great, but I'm going to explain it to you without necessarily reading from it. So what is it? The federal definition just means we're referring to when a student misses 10% or more of the school year, okay? Whether that's unexcused absences, excused absences, just 10% or more of the school year, okay? And that is what is commonly used still across most states. We here in Kentucky like to challenge. And so we use that same 10% threshold, absolutely, except we calculate just a little bit differently. So instead of the number of days missed, we look at attendance through minutes, okay? And so it's actually the full-time equivalency of the minutes that students are present. So that's when you look at federal, they look at the whole, like, you're just not there. For Kentucky, we look at a little bit more intentionality with the minutes of your actual presence in school. Okay. And then that is divided by the total possible instructional minutes that they have. Okay. And so I think that that definition gets a little murky at times because when districts and schools are trying to figure out attendance policies, if there isn't a clear-cut understanding of the federal versus Kentucky's definition, it can lead to a lot of confusion, which then leads to misinformation and then just a drop in communication, right? And so I'm not going to stay on this for too long. I just wanted to explain that there is a difference there and also remind us that it's okay to think that truancy is the same thing as chronic absenteeism. It's okay to think that, but I'm going to tell you that it's not, okay? I'm going to meet you where you're at and remind you that truancy, all right, is based only on unexcused absences and at least 3, okay? So truancy is just that's it. Now a student is habitually truant if they have 3 or more unexcused absences at least 2 times or more, okay? Truancy is separate from chronic absenteeism because chronic absenteeism is talking about the whole, okay? Like we're trying to figure out the complete picture of who is missing out on learning time, no matter what the reason is, okay? And so I just wanted to also shed light on that, that is also a difference. Not because they can't operate in the same sphere, because they do, but truancy is not chronic absenteeism. Chronic absenteeism is, let's look at the whole part and figure out what's really going on. Do I have any questions on that? I know there's been just a little bit of, and that's why it's not that it's wrong, just a little misinformation, and so here to kind of clarify that for people, or for you all to take that back to clarify if you need to. See where I'm going with that? There has been a legislative update. So House Bill 611 went into effect officially this school year, 24-25. Excuse me, one second. And what it requires officially now is for the district, so DPPs are district pupil personnel, to report to county attorney any students in grades K through 5 who has 15 unexcused absences. Okay. And then for those in 6 through 12, it's students who are identified as habitually truant. So I went over truancy first. Okay, so remember, truancy is 3 unexcused absences at least 2 times means you're habitually truant. Okay, and have 15 unexcused absences. We're not going to really marinate on this too much. Just wanted to bring awareness to it that this did go into effect. And we have, unfortunately, kind of seen some implications, right? So we want to hear from you, any implications or any attendance or of this bill, or any attendance policies that maybe you're aware of in your communities that you've experienced this year. Feel free to drop it in the chat or unmute yourself. What implications or any issues that you've seen, or maybe celebrations of this bill or other attendance policies that you've experienced in your school setting or in your area?
I know that it's definitely had an effect on the fair teams. I don't know how we all feel about it. I know we've all been kind of on the edge of our seats watching and waiting and seeing. Being that they've cut us out of the other charges and that it's truancy only is a big, big factor. I don't know if it's just families are settling in from COVID finally or what, but I feel, at least in our region, we saw a drop, at least in all of our counties except for one, in our truancy issues. So that was some good.
That's a huge celebration, yes.
But the one county I'm speaking of was a huge county. It's got several schools. It's bigger than all our other counties. So it's its own little world. So
Thank you for sharing, Amanda.
I think some of the issues that I experienced this year, I have an 18-year-old that had not finished high school yet and was of the mind that he could go when he wanted to and come when he didn't. And that's difficult to deal because you only have certain parent notes, and I don't like writing parent notes. And the tardiness, it's kind of confusing when it says how many tardies and how many, because they kind of group it all together. I think tardy being a couple minutes late would be one thing. Being truant, to me, not going to school is another. That's just my opinion.
Thank you. And Pat, thank you for sharing that, because part of what we will kind of lean into are the different attendance policies, because they do fortunately, I apologize, differ among schools and districts. However, clarification seems to be a very common issue and concern. So we're going to hopefully be able to provide maybe some recommendations that you could send down the pipeline to your peoples. Anybody else? Oh,
leading off of him, there are some schools that count tardies, like so many tardies, as a full unexcused absence, whereas others don't. And I've seen within even the same district, some of them, like, they pick and choose when they choose to do it. So I would like to see that they all have similar policies across the state to keep it less confusing.
Some of the problems I've been exposed to was if the children are taken out of school for a particular reason, doctor notes and stuff like that, it's still considered not an unexcused absence, but an absence. So then you have to go and separate what are unexcused and what are excused. And on my report, it doesn't come back that way. It comes back as absences. Or they're not absences if they're excused. So there's, that's kind of confusing on the parent role and how much you can jump on an 18-year-old and say, hey, you didn't go to school when I've already taken them out of school for different appointments. So that makes it, and I know that, I know that we can get special compensation or special permission for doctor's appointments, but it's not separated. The excused absences from the total absences. I think that should be at least documented somewhere on the report card that it is an excused absence rather than just an absence. Does that make sense?
No, absolutely. That disaggregate, yes, that is one of the most common concerns because it does look different everywhere. It does. And then again, just the saturation with quantities equating to different things. I'm taking notes, by the way, sorry, as you all are just speaking about different things, because when we mentioned earlier, this is a learning opportunity. We want to be able to take the information that we're getting from you all, and we're part of our chronic absentee work group, our COG, as we so eloquently call it, that has people that are actually in this series and partners across the state to address specific things like you're talking about. So thank you so much for speaking out and giving us that feedback. And then
And Ashley, I do want to
ahead.
acknowledge some of the comments in the chat too about that with the bill and policies that have gone into place that homeschooling has increased across the state. And Charles mentioned too that once in Greenup County, once you're before the court, homeschooling is no longer an option. So they have to go through that process.
And then to Melanie, thank you for sharing this. I'm just going to abbreviate as I'm reading this, but must send on to court after 4 unexcused absences after starting diversion. And diversion is another added layer of that, right? I'm an avid note taker. Had a bad week and CDS must send to court. Yes. All right. Thank you all so much for sharing. Please, if you, as we continue to go, drop that in the chat. I'm going to keep us going just to conserve and pass the baton to some visuals of really what's kind of been going on, where we're at, where we've been, and where we're trying to go. All right, so go ahead, Lisa.
All right, so we're going to jump into some data. We won't spend a huge amount of time on this, but as Ashley said, we just kind of want you to see the history of where Kentucky has been comparative to the national trends and to states around us. So Ashley, go ahead if you will. All right, so just like most of our nation, Kentucky's chronic absences slightly decreased from our high, which was in the 22-23 school year. We were at 30% of our students were chronically absent. And that decreased last year to 28%, so that's fantastic. We won't have the new data until August from everything being closed out this school year. And we'll have new information in August for everybody. And hopefully that trend has continued to go down. And I just want to give a shout out to Leslie McKinney from KDE. She is our data guru in putting all of this information together. And she does such an amazing job at researching. Go ahead, Ashley. This is just to show you that the chronic absenteeism rates in surrounding states also have dropped along with Kentucky, with the exception of Indiana. Everybody has decreased by a few percentage points in the last year. Next slide. Okay. And then this is showing where the chronic absenteeism is the highest. So anything in blue was 25% of that district was chronically absent. Or had a chronic absenteeism rate of 25% or higher. So you can see on the upper left, this is before the pandemic. This is from 2018. And then below that is right after the pandemic. And then the largest map is from this, the 2023-24 school year. So we can see that chronic absenteeism is across our state. It's not happening in just one region. And, obviously we see some trends that it's more heavily happening in Eastern Kentucky, and we're having conversations about that in our office and trying to help support everybody there and what we can do to help those students and families and those communities. But we just wanted to kind of show you this, that again, it's not just one area, it's everywhere. And then chronic absences decreased among most student groups last year. There's still significant gaps among some groups. Ashley, if you'll go to the next slide. This is what I really want to focus on. So these are the subgroups. In the green, you have the 2023-24 school year. In the red, you have right after the pandemic, and blue is before the pandemic. So in the chat, if you want to drop, if you're working with any of these subgroups, which ones are you working with the most, and which ones do you still see the chronic absenteeism happening with in your work or within your community?
And I'll just share as a perspective from my previous lens. I know for us being at an alternative program, most of our students dinged all of these, right? Like we had a very high homeless percentage of students, our poverty, you know, my sped kids, I'm a sped educator, and so my babies. So it's just, they all align somehow, right? Anybody?
And just like Ashley said, I saw this in my work too in Fayette County. Most of my students at the alternative program that I was at hit all of these subgroups. So Ashley, if you'll go on to the next slide. We do just want to mention too that absenteeism is tied to student performance, and this is from the 2023-24 KSA results. Those students who were not chronically absent, these are their average scores on the reading test. And so that you can see that they're scoring obviously higher than the students who are blue. Those students were the ones that were chronically absent. And what I'd like to point out too is that at the bottom, you've got the novice cut scores. So you can see, like, for example, in the 7th grade, we have the kids who are chronically absent are actually scoring below that cut score. And then if on the next slide, we see the same data for the math performance on the KSAs last year. So again, we want to, be talking to families about being absent from school does have an impact on learning. All right. And then finally, it is the goal nationally by a lot of states. We work with a group called Attendance Works, and our governor, or not our governor, excuse me, our commissioner has had a strategic plan created, and we are trying to reduce chronic absenteeism by 50% in 5 years. So our goal is to reduce that chronic absenteeism rates to 15% by the end of the school year in 2029, which is a huge goal, but we're making progress. And so we're going to just keep the momentum going in, and hopefully our conversations today will keep that in mind. All right, Ashley.
Thank you, Lisa. All right, so why now? Okay, so we've been hearing about this being an issue, chronic absenteeism, attendance. Okay, like that's great. But it's doubled post-pandemic, just to remind us, okay? Student disengagement, behavior challenges, and staff burnout are on the rise, okay? That's not even including family and communities, okay? And then disconnection is a systems level signal of deeper breakdown, not just a discipline issue. And I'm gonna repeat that again, because disconnection is a systems level signal of deeper breakdown, not just a discipline issue. And based on the temp check that we did earlier, knowing the people that are in the room, I feel like that stigma that's associated with if a kid's disconnected, it's because they're acting bad or because of this. But what we're not doing is looking at what else is going on behind the veil, right? Like what else is happening? Behavior is communicating a need. No matter if the behavior is present in front of you physically, or if it's absent because they're not there. Okay. And so why it matters in the Commonwealth, because this is home. This is Kentucky. We're different. We're built different, y'all. Okay. We're doing things different. And over 28% of our students are chronically absent, which signals that disconnection, right? We know that. That's what we know. Students want to feel seen, heard, and valued by the adults and peers around them. They don't want to just, good morning, little Johnny. Hey, how was that basketball game last night? Hey, did you end up following up on that recipe you said you were going to try and make for your family? We always had like ramen recipes. That was like our highlight in our school. Uh, but they want to feel seen, heard, and valued. They want to hold value. They want to feel valued, not just by the adults, but by their peers as well. So part of our work as Persistence to Graduation team are providing access and information around tools like early warning and insights, which are helping educators and student support systems across our state right now identify that disconnection and help start rebuilding relationships that lead to that re-engagement process. So these are those contributing factors, like these are those, what's really going on behind the veil, right? Barriers for our students can include things like chronic health conditions, family responsibilities. Every time I read that, I always think of one of my students who like legitimately ran his household, man of the house, from the time he was 12 on, and just to know that that responsibility was on his shoulders every day he came through the door. Okay, how can we help him out today? Like what can we do to make it seamless today, or to make it meet him where he's at and help him through it? Transportation, I feel like, whew, if there was a bus genie, all right, like can you imagine? Housing, food insecurity, and community violence. Those are huge barriers. And I know and I hope that a lot of you all could think of things as just subcategories of that. Then we get to things like aversion, right? Like academic or behavioral struggles. I struggled in math. I didn't like being in math class. I like math now. I didn't, but I tried to find ways to avoid it. Unwelcoming school climate. Kids know if a school's real or not, y'all. Okay. They know. They have the biggest, pardon my French, BS detectors that I've ever seen in my life. And that is what makes our students amazing and incredible. Problems with peers, all right. Bullying is a huge issue, ongoing issue that we're trying to address. Anxiety and depression. And then disengagement, point blank, bored. Any of y'all remember a time that you were bored in school? If you haven't, I would love to know what types of school systems you attended, respectfully, okay? But lack of connection or belonging, lack of enrichment opportunities. It's one thing to just have different types of classes or different types of activities that cater to the main group, right? But what about those other types of enrichment? I didn't know what D&D was until we started a D&D club after school. Those of you that don't know what that is, Dungeons and Dragons, oh my goodness. The amount of creativity and competitiveness that comes in that. And then habits formed during COVID, right? A lot of us just got kind of laissez-faire, if you will. Not lazy, we got laissez-faire. We just kind of got laid back a little bit. And so misconceptions have also been formed because of a lot of things, right? So assumptions about staying home for symptoms of illness, they're not really sick. Belief that attendance doesn't matter. So what? Or that only unexcused absences are a problem. And then for some kids or some families, just underestimating the total amount of absences because there's so many different attendance policies here, there, and everywhere, right? So for you all, we kind of talked a little bit, but what are some of the most common barriers to attendance you saw in the past year? Why did you see kids not wanting to go to school?
And you can drop that in the chat or you can unmute, but Charles already put one in there that parents are up and out the door before their kids are on the bus. And so transportation is a barrier, right? Like, or not transportation, but somebody to be there to help them get out the door.
Or make them.
Or make them. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. That gentle nudge.
Yeah. The parents, some of the parents I represent will give the excuses to the child to take to school. And then, believe it or not, the child does not give it to the right person at the school. So I've had to tell them repeatedly, you take the excuse to school. And if possible, you take your child to school, have your child's hand in your hand, walk them to a responsible person at the school. You at that point have done everything you can do, because in Greenup County, the parents get charged with unlawful transaction with a minor if there's truancy by their children.
Mm.
Boyd County, which is right next door, charges the children with truancy. It just two next door counties with totally different approaches.
Oh. Wow.
And I would also say that COVID, in a way, just exposed the fact that the current generation of children live so much of their lives on screens instead of in person. And that probably has had an effect on them going in person to school.
Oh, absolutely. And I know, like, for us in even like the post-COVID era at our school, um, based on the situation circumstance for our kids, like we would offer not a hybrid, but if a student was absent a couple more days, not unexcused, but excused absence, we'd offer a virtual like check-in session. Again, that was us. Not every school did that, but just the variance across so much is seemingly causing a lot of that that negative kind of, yeah. We gotta all come together, figure this out, y'all.
So I've seen a
Um,
lot of anxiety issues. The children having extreme anxiety to the point they're almost unable to leave their house, even outside of school related stuff. A lot of bullying. The kids and the families are really fed up with how the school's addressing those issues. And so they're like, my kids could stay home. They don't need to go to a toxic environment. Like, it's hurting them. So there needs to be some changes made there as well.
Thank you for sharing. I want to highlight some comments in the chat as well. I saw Lisa's eyes move over to it. I want to highlight, Pat, the safe place to take all age children to go before school start. Um, Can you imagine how just impactful? Again, I'm taking notes as we're going through this. Serena, thank you. Behavior difficulties and suspensions. Again, that goes into schools' behavior policies and district policies, all being different. Bullying and not wanting to be in that school climate was huge. Yes. Climate's everything, y'all. And I don't mean the weather, no. Although that does have an impact. But just that feel that students, that parents, that community members, that advocates get when you walk into any setting. That in itself can be one of the number one deterrents, right? Not turning in notes. Sarah, in our area, we have a ton of swing shift workers. Ooh, yeah, families are struggling with childcare and transportation due to their work school schedule. Samantha, culture and parents not knowing the importance of school. That cultural piece, yep, we're going to get into that. Some of you all are like foreshadowing some of the bits we're about to dive into. Kids up to 2 a.m. in the morning refuse to get up for school. What? Kids don't play video games or stay on their phone that late. What do you mean? I hear parents say their children are anxious quite often. Yes. Not on the subject of common barriers. Bigger and consolidated schools seem to be the goal, especially in Eastern Kentucky, which would appear to support the disconnect. Yep. Some of these kids in high schools. Okay. We are going to thank you all. Thank you so much for contributing to the conversation, for sharing your experiences and your suggestions. We are going to pivot just slightly to our next piece, because I think that you all will find, I hope that you all will find just something that you can take away from it as we're talking about some of these barriers. So, and please continue to fill the chat with your comments and thoughts and suggestions.
Okay, so we're going to go into some tiered supports for attendance. When we talk about tiered supports, that universal prevention on the bottom of the triangle, those are the things that we put in place as schools, districts, communities to support all students, families, and staffs. And so You guys are on here today. You're trying to come up with different ideas, giving us suggestions for, you know, what's not working, what is working. And we're going to keep all of those. As Ashley says, we're writing notes because we want to take this back to our chronic absentee work group. And we want to invite you into further conversations later with us if possible. And then tier 2 is going to be our early interventions for our kiddos who are missing 10 to 20% of the school. And our most intense interventions are going to be with those kids who are extreme absenteeism, they're greater than 20%. Ashley, if you'll go to the next slide, please. All right, so tier 1, the first thing that we're going to talk about with tier 1, and Ashley's already alluded to this, is connection, belonging, and safety. Making sure that our schools are fostering a welcoming and supporting culture for students and adults. Using that positive and nurturing language, greeting kids by name, and as Ashley said, you know, they know what's real and what's fake. And so I think about my morning duties at my school that I came from before I came to KDE 4 months ago, is one of my morning duties was to check kids with the metal detector. And that's because of the environment that I was in. But that was my time to check in with them, see how their weekends were, if anything had happened over the bus, if they had any carryover from an event maybe that happened at home. And so like greeting them each morning, letting them know that I care about them, letting them know like, hey, if you need support for something that happened over the weekend, maybe somebody bullied them in a group chat over the weekend, right? And so they didn't really want to be in the building, and maybe we can get somebody to go and meet with these 2 students and have some restorative practices, and then they can go and be in class and function the rest of the day, right? Just those easy check-ins. Also doing some relationship mapping, which we'll take a look at here in a minute with an example. Again, creating opportunities for student interest, as Ashley mentioned, like starting clubs, starting groups that they want to be involved with. For my son, and he just graduated high school last year, he joined the yoga club. And I didn't quite understand that. I know he's really into fitness, but then when I saw a picture of him in the yoga club, I totally got it because there was a photo of him and like 15 cute little girls, right? So that was his in. And, you know, like he said, well, it's for hockey. I'm working on my stretching, but I don't think so. Anyways, having support for your educators in your building too, checking in with the staff, making sure that they're doing okay. As Ashley mentioned kind of earlier, we just came out of a mental health first aid training for adults. And I wish that there had been some mental health first aid specialists in our building to check in with us post-COVID, make sure that we're okay. Next slide, Ashley. Okay, so this is an example of relationship mapping. I'm sorry. If you can't hear me. If this is one thing that you can do, there's a virtual version and there's an in-person version, and I love the in-person version. You basically have the staff at your schools create a wall, an area in the building, and they you put up the list of all the names of the kids in the building. Obviously, you want to do this when the kids aren't there, like on a release day, a PD day, etc. And the staff goes around with stickers or a marker or a highlight or something, and they put a mark on every student that they feel that they truly have a relationship with. Not that they're just in their class, not that they say hi to them in the hallway, but have a relationship with. And then you see the kids that maybe don't have stickers, and then you have your staff start to think about, okay, who has the best approach to have like an intentional relationship with that student? And schools that we've talked to have found that this to be very effective, so that you have that check-in with students regularly to make them feel like that they belong at that building. Because it's one thing for a student to hear people say that they're wanted, it's another to feel it, right? Okay, go ahead, Ashley, I'm sorry. And one of the reasons that we talk about this slide is because from our KDE school report card on the culture and climate survey questions that students are given, Over 50,000 students in Kentucky feel like that there's not an adult that they can talk to if they have a problem. And that is huge, right? We want to make sure that all kids feel connected, that they have somebody that they can trust. All right. We started talking about external barriers with health, having partnerships with your public health department. I know um, the district that I live in, and the school that my son attended, they have a public health um, clinic that the students in this area can go to. And it's even open during the summer. So if they need to go see somebody for if they're not feeling well, if they need support with vaccinations, physical forms, etc., but mostly for like illness and related, that's there. Having a telehealth person to come in and provide to your district, and also not just for physical health but for mental health. I know I was in Powell County a couple months ago, and they have a great partnership with several mental health services in that area, and so kids can get support in that way with providers, and so can families. Transportation, and that was a big thing, like post-COVID, bus drivers here wanted to start working for Amazon and for UPS because they were making more money that right way. And we saw a huge gap in being able to get even people to drive the bus routes. And so just figuring out with your communities, what are some better ways we could do transportation, providing breakfast at your school, and for my students, those that were late to school, being able to pick something up on their way in the door. And I was one of those teachers, like, you can eat in my classroom as long as you clean up your own mess. I don't clean up after you. I have a child at home. I don't want to clean up after anybody's child, but allowing that for students who may be late, who may have food insecurity, having laundry rooms. Next slide, Ashley. Big one. Meaningful and relevant learning. As Ashley said, a lot of our kids just feel bored, right? And there is a big push on vibrant learning right now with our department and with throughout KDE. And we're trying to highlight those schools that are having those real world relevant experiences. For myself, it was even though I was an English teacher, when I taught summer school, we coordinated between all the different disciplines to talk about urban food deserts and gardening. And so the kids were reading articles about urban food deserts, reading pieces and analyzing them, and then reading editorials from both sides. But then in the science classroom, they were picking out plants, learning about botany, going out and actually planting the plants. In the math classes, they calculated the budgets, they did the designs for the gardens, they did all the geometry and algebra related to like doing all of the skills, and like it was so effective and the kids loved it. And they got to see the products of their learning when the crops came in. And so just allowing for students to have those types of learning experiences. And then making sure that we're having culturally relevant experiences for kids, having them, if you're in I have an English teacher, making sure that they're using text that the kids can relate to. Ashley, next slide. Communication is another tier one intervention, making sure that we're communicating with families that students who just miss 2 days a month um, are losing learning, right? Because 2 days a month equals 20 days a year equals a whole month of school that they've missed. And I know when my son was in travel sports, that was a big thing that he was missing a lot during the winter. He had the flu almost every Friday in order to go be on his sports team. But the reality is like it impacted his learning and his grades slipped. And he was one of those kids that would keep up with the studies, and he had a teacher mom at home, right, to check on him. But a lot of our kids don't have that. And then making sure that we're just welcoming families, having those positive phone calls. And I really want to stress this one. And this is from personal experience. I made it my mission about 2 years ago to start making 3 positive phone calls a week on kids. And it was one of my seniors that I called to say that he had done a great job in facilitating discussion for his group. at school that day, and the mom said to me, "You're the first person who's ever called with a positive comment about my son." So, and from that point on, I never had a behavioral issue with that kid. I never had a problem with him completing assignments. I never had an issue of any kind. And he came in and thanked me. And it made me think as a parent, had I ever received any positive feedback about my son, right? And um, I could think of one time in the 12 years that my son had been in school that I received a positive phone call. And it was during COVID. The school had checked in to say, "Hey, we really appreciate that he's getting online and doing his classes." But I think like that, those positive moments, not, our parents are getting calls about truancy, they're getting calls about behavior, they're getting calls about etc., grades failing, whatever. But are we taking time to reach out and make those positive phone calls and those positive connections so that we can lean into our families when we need them for bigger things as well? And this is just an example of a communication email that Jefferson County uses, that they send out automatically, that kind of shows the family where their kids are based on their attendance. And again, as somebody stated earlier, if it's excused versus unexcused, your data going into your systems is going to give you the best data going out. And hopefully there is, that disaggregation that your districts are leaning into, making sure that they were out because they broke their leg in soccer versus they're out because they just chose not to get up out of bed that morning because they were up playing Minecraft till 2 a.m. Ashley, if you want to go over tier 2 and 3.
I will. I do want to highlight and shout out to Charles in the chat over here. Just want to highlight his district judge used to always tell the kids they have to get ready for college. But Charles, thank you, Charles, for being a pivot, have been able to get him also to say learning a trade and they can acquire skills in VOTEC that will give them a start on that path. And shifting that stigma or that narrative as well, that you have to go to college in order to be successful. Like I know that was one of our cultural shifts in our alternative program, because most of our kids were wanting to pursue just normal trade careers, and there's nothing wrong with that. So how do we kind of pivot that? And you do it by having those conversations. So thank you, Charles, for sharing that. I am going to just briefly touch on our tier 2 and tier 3. So just to refresh, tier 2 is just that universal is everybody. This should just be what we do. Okay, universally, why should we have to tell you? That's kind of how I've always looked at it. Early intervention is that we're getting close. All right. So tier 2, what is communication with chronically absent students? What can that look like? And I want to draw attention to the fact the first bullet point says home visit / family engagement visit. And then I failed to reiterate the fact that it needs to be a voluntary. Voluntary is mentioned in the key components, but a voluntary home visit or family engagement visit. And I don't have to tell you all why that's so important. I just wanted to stress that because that in itself is can be one of the best ways to meet people where they're at, but could also be the quickest way for you to not even be able to move forward with an intervention. You know what I'm saying? And so I love those, but I just want to caution that I have failed forward, as I say, with my previous life in education, and seen both phenomenal visits and ones where it's like, wait, what? Okay. So voluntary home visits, family engagement visits, I think are just one of the most, it should be a universal, just to, like a good check-in. I like the family cookout kind of thing. Personalized phone calls, emails, letters. Lisa exacerbated a problem that we have in education where educators are afraid to call home, or we don't have the time to call home, or when we do call home, we never get a response. And so when we leave 17 voicemails, okay, sometimes it could be discouraging, but why would that make us stop? And I say that because the power of the connect, right? Connecting, calling home, not only when something bad is happening, no, calling home, hey, we have this really awesome parent night coming up, and we're going to have food trucks and some inflatables and some really great information for your families to take back with you. That's personalized. That's not, something that's intentional, okay? Not just a blanket thing that goes out to everybody, right? And then student support plan. I'm going to stay on this for a while because this is what I did. We created a student support team that failed forward in the 6 years that we implemented it. And when I stepped away from my role, I can say that it was still successfully working for our tier 2 and tier 3 kids. But what it looked like was goal setting with goal setting with progress monitoring, but we had an action plan that incorporated the student's voice, right? So my student came in with his own plan. He said, this is the goal that I want to set. These are the strengths that I have. You create a sense of awareness for them, but also foster an environment where they can advocate and tell you what it is that they're going to need to be successful. Yes, a student should be telling you what they need to be successful, right? All too often we get into this, well, this is what experts say, and this is what you need to be successful. No, student support systems have to look individualized for that student, all right? Because you're not going to do the same thing for one kid that you do for this kid, because this kid maybe just lost a parent last week, and we're trying to create a student support system that builds him up and carries him forward. Whereas maybe this student support system, you just need to stop. We just need to stop vaping, right? Stop going to the bathroom and vaping. Okay. And I say that, and I draw humor to it because student support plans don't have to be these like dark and dangerous types of plans. They're to support our kids. Okay. But also the structured reinforcement, the consistency will then impact the effectiveness of that plan, right? But student support plans, student support teams. One of the people we're going to talk about, Bob Balfons, if you're not aware of him, grad partnership, Google it. His whole organization is about supporting student success systems and how that's where that's the foundation for everything, y'all. Okay. And so as we continue to spiral into our data tools, after this next segment, we're going to get into a little bit of that Bob Balfons magic. Tier 3, supporting students with extreme absenteeism. These are just going to be those next level, like how do we get everybody involved to help support this kid, which in theory, right, should be your universal strategies. Okay. But community-based interventions, Christian County has has a community connections program. Anybody from Christian County in here? Shout out to y'all. That partnered with Justice and Public Safety Cabinet to the program reconnected educated youth with their community. And what they saw was there was a significant decrease in repeat offenses. And so just again, that connection to something, right? To something bigger than themselves, that sense of belonging. Mentors and advocates, students with mentors are 52% less likely to miss school. Students with mentors are 52% less likely to miss school and 37% less likely to skip class. I can think of 2 kids right now that just graduated, my babies, 2 weeks ago. We made it 6th grade to 12th grade. Lots of obstacles, lots of challenges, but they made it. And when I asked my kiddo on graduation, like what was one of the things, and y'all might laugh, y'all might not. He said, I was always afraid of like what you would think. And I'm like, what? Like, because I was always in the halls. I was a hall monitor, if you will, behavior coach. But he was like, I didn't want to let you down. I didn't want to disappoint you. And it was like, huh, I had no idea. Like, I knew that we had that connection, and that is my kid, my son, if you will. But hearing that and knowing that just that relationship really did make a difference, right? Because sometimes we say that, yes, be the trusted adult, but to hear from him that really did make a difference for him, power of connection, y'all. And then obviously a tier 3 transportation funds. And I'm not going to get too into this because I know that we are in a unique climate right now with just some funding and whatnot, but transportation for homeless students, McKinney-Vento, I love, praise anybody that works with and for our McKinney-Vento liaison in our district is a godsend. So bless you all in the work that you do, but transportation opportunities through that is a really great way to do. So I did see a hand. I saw a notification for a hand, and then I want to open up for some questions. And then Lisa, I think we might want to pivot through this next section or two.
I had raised my hand. I just
Please.
wanted to comment on that Community Connections program for Christian County.
Please.
I had the pleasure to be able to volunteer for their scavenger hunt with their DJJ kids last year. And it was, oh my God, so beautiful. These kids' faces, um, the relationships that are built with community partners that come out and help. The judge opens up his property and his
Wow.
home to these kids. They feel loved, they feel seen, and they definitely have less reoffense. They throw things for them that they're not allowed to do. So they'll like throw a prom for them. They'll do all these activities with them that they're missing because of their court stuff that they've got going on. That, you know, a lot of people don't realize these kids are missing out on so much. It can make it worse. And they're like, well, if they already think I'm a bad kid, then I'm going to show them a bad kid.
Yeah.
So it helps so much more than people realize.
Thank you for sharing that. And the fact that you were a volunteer for one of their events, like that's just, yeah, it hit in my feet. Sorry, I'm a very empathic person. So I felt that. That was awesome. Thank you. Anybody else want to share anything that they notice, any ideas, suggestions before we move forward? Awesome. Well, this is part of the program where we might move just very quickly through an overview. Lisa, I don't think we have time for a live demo, would you say? Or do you want to move forward with yours at least?
I just want to kind of show a little bit. Can you go to the early warning slides for me?
Absolutely. So just to kind of narrate for you all what we have. So we do want to talk about early warning and insights with you all, but because this conversation has led to such an intentional and amazing pivot, we want to make sure we get to components that we hope that you can take back as well. Is this a slide you want, Lisa, or you want the info slide?
Yeah, so obviously with chronic absenteeism, Ashley and I, our work revolves around dropout prevention as well. And we know that when students drop out, they feel like that they're pushed out or they're pulled out or they're falling out. Pulled out usually has to do with family circumstances that they need to help provide for the family, maybe somebody's sick, or maybe they had to get a job themselves. The push out is and the falling out is just school related, right? And I'm not going to read through these, but we know that kids feel like they're pushed out if they've missed too much or they feel like that they're behind, they're not engaged, etc. Ashley, if you'll go on. And that process of disengagement occurs over many years. So the early warning tool, this is a tool that every school has access to with Infinite Campus. It provides a grad score for schools to see how which kids are most likely to graduate. The higher the score is they're on path for graduation. The lower the score, they're more likely to not graduate. And so the score ranges from 50 to 150. Ashley, if you'll go ahead to the next slide. And it's based on attendance, behavior, course performance, and the big thing that we look at is stability. And that is like, for many of you, that's your work, right? Stability is how many times has that kid moved? How many times has their phone number changed at home? It also looks at the demographics of the student. Are they homeless? Do they need free and reduced lunch? Are they migrant? Are they in foster care? How long have they been in the school district and how many schools have they been in since they were enrolled in that district? Whether the family is looking at portal logons. And I'm just going to go quickly into early warning and just kind of show you what this looks like. And then you can, if you are in the schools, you can ask for support with this, or if you're not, it may be something that you would say like, hey, do we have somebody monitoring this. So what it looks like from the school perspective in Infinite Campus, and this is the new view of Infinite Campus that if you haven't switched over, it is going live this summer. It's under counseling, but you can give tool rights to people in your buildings who maybe work on a MTSS team, or maybe they're on your PBIS lead team. And so, for example, people will see that they have the kids that are in red um, are the ones that are less likely to graduate. And what they can do is they can change these numbers to say, like, maybe I only have the capacity to work with 15 kids this year or this month, to have conversations with them, and they can run that report, and then they can go down to their data, disaggregate it by the score, and there's opportunities to send it to Excel. And they can see, okay, these kids are the ones with the lowest grad score. They're the most vulnerable to dropping out potentially, but then we can look strictly just at attendance, right? So I can say, like, okay, who are our 10 kids who are the most chronically absent in our building, and we need to have conversations and see what we can do. So for example, if I look on Jason, right, I can see his scores for the year. I can look at it by the last 12 months. I can look at it by the last 30 days. And again, it can be broken down even more, but we can start to see that his attendance has dropped here, and maybe start to have a conversation with why that attendance has dropped. And one of the things I like, and again, we're giving you a quick overview of this, and we do offer in-depth training on this, but we can see that the most impact is going to be on stability. And so maybe your frisks, maybe your social workers in your buildings, um, somebody that talks about stability can go in and have the conversation with him, with the family, and see, like, what is it that you guys need, so that we can see that he is here more, so that other things start to improve, because we want to make an impact with him. And then I'll turn it over to Ashley again. I know that was super fast. It's just one data tool that's available for all schools, but we used it for looking at interventions in our district for who are the kids we need to target here and now.
Thank you. Thank you. I am going to, the switchback is always awkward, sorry. Okay. So I am going to not do a live demo of Insights because I do want to get to school connectedness, because that's like, I don't know if y'all can tell, I'm getting like, ooh, I'm excited. Like, I'm getting fired up, my heart's racing. But I do want to shed light on the importance of Insights for those of you that already have experience with early warning tool and are just looking for, okay, now what? We've identified those kids. We see this, now what? And that's what Insights can do. So as a former behavior coach, okay, I wish I would have had Insights because I use Tableau, not because I don't love Tableau, not hating on Tableau, but Insights puts everything from your grad score. Is that okay? So your student assessments, your attendance, your classroom performance, stability, behavior, and it's in one place. One place. And as someone that used Swiss and Tableau, and we had process points for our students and focus room tracking data and counselor intervention, so all of those data points and sets, this is where it lives in Infinite Campus. And it is a blessing. And I'm going to call her a goddess, okay? Christina Watford is the queen of Insights, okay? I could listen to her talk about this all day, so I'm not going to do it justice by even trying to show a demo. I just want to give you all different categories that you can look at on the Insights dashboard. So for me, behavior is where I would have lived. Detentions by event, student, grade, resolution. But to pivot to what the conversation has been around with attendance, absenteeism tier, right? So not just who are the chronically absent students, but who are the ones that are, oh my gosh, we're kind of on that cusp, right? Early intervention. But the absenteeism tier is really great because then you can see reason by period, by weekday, and then the status by period and weekday, which only goes to reinforce the power of accurate data being put into this machine learning system, because machine learning can only take what it gives in, right? It only puts out what it gives in. And so I think I stepped over that slide, by the way, Lisa, I apologize. But Insights is used as a companion with the early warning tool for your student success teams, okay? For your MTSS teams. And so this could be its own training. So we just wanted to bring awareness to it. But it is the most data sensitive or informational sensitive, right? So that personally identifiable information, all Kentucky districts have access to this. However, making Infinite Campus Insight specifically rights available, you just want to make sure that the people that you're giving those rights to are the ones that need those need access to that information for their role, okay? Because it is sensitive info. And Lisa, I did not mean to cut you off with the end of, I just put or was that all that you wanted to wrap up on that? Perfect.
You're good.
Okay. All right. So What Works Clearinghouse had talked about using data systems to identify students at risk, but we keep going back to this, having an adult advocate to students at risk of dropout. And that goes back to that connection, right? Being connected to something, someone, right? Which is what school connectedness is. Pretty simple, nothing fancy, nothing wild, but school connectedness. Building relationships to reconnect students. So what is it? Well, this is that Bob Balfon's piece that I'm bringing in. So grad partnership and CDC say that school connectedness is a student's belief that adults and peers in school care about their learning, well-being, and personal success. Not just their learning, not just their test scores, not just what's happening now, but about their well-being and personal success. It's built through trust, relationships, and meaningful participation in the school community, right? We go back to that intentionality, right? A kid that's bored in a classroom is not finding meaning in what's happening around them. And is supported through both individual actions and systemic structures. Y'all have heard me say that a lot. Because at the end of the day, connection is protective, and the power that it holds, again, coming off of a mental health first aider training this week, which those of you that may not know, it is 3 days of collaboration, connection, and just doing the work, right? Putting in the time to be aware and figure out how to be aware enough for ourselves to meet our kids and everybody else where we're at. And so students who feel connected report 40% fewer mental health challenges alongside better attendance, achievement, and graduation outcomes. Because at the end of the day, that's what we want. We want our kids to be successful as a whole child perspective. Connection buffers the impact of trauma and adversity, especially our students that face ACEs, those adverse childhood experiences. Strong relationships and belonging are research-backed strategies for dropout prevention. It's simple. It's as simple as just being there, right? So Bob and his team over at Grad Partnership, I say that, I promise his name is Bob, like it's Robert Balfons, but I just feel like Bob sounds way more casual and way more approachable. So the 4 pillars of connection that he offers are that students feel connected when they have an adult-student relationship, they have peer belonging, they have meaningful engagement, and they are part of a safe and inclusive environment. And I'm going to stay on this slide and just kind of talk through the importance and what each of those can look like. Because adult-student relationships, again, we keep talking about that. And I feel like in a lot of our PBIS, all these different strategies, interventions, tools that we have, relationships, it's about meaningful relationships. You can have a surface level relationship with just about anybody, right? But like we've already reiterated, students can tell what's real and what's not. Gone are the days when people, that's not true. It is true. We know it's true. And so when they know that at least one teacher or staff member cares about them as an individual, that holding value, okay, that's a game changer. That changes everything. Peer belonging, they belong to a supportive peer group. And when I was talking about this, I had a couple colleagues kind of look through this week. And one of the comments about the supportive peer group is that support can be negative and positive, right? So for the peer belonging, because a lot of us, I think, supportive peers that don't necessarily support positive choices, right? but they still belong to something, right? Like I'm part of that group that walks down the hallway and we act like we're going to do something, but really as soon as you step at us, we're going to scurry, okay? They want to belong to something, someone, somewhere. Meaningful engagement. Are y'all tired of hearing me say meaningful yet? They're engaged in meaningful learning experiences, vibrant learning experiences. I had the privilege of teaching a project-based learning style class when I was in the classroom. I say privilege because it was like a, hey, do you want to create a class? Sure, what should it be? Anything you want. And so we focused on project-based learning style, food truck project, that farm to table concept, tying in things that made sense to them, but also making it relevant because the kids that I served and my kiddos aren't going to go on to make, we're not talking about food truck project and how to make a multi-million-dollar empire. We're learning teamwork. We're learning, how do you clean a dish the right way? Y'all know what I'm talking about. Okay. How do you clean a dish the right way? That's real. Okay. How do you microwave ramen noodles without burning them? All right. Just little things, those normal life skills that I think sometimes we just forget that a lot of our kids don't know or don't have the tools for yet. And then safe and inclusive environment. So they feel a sense of belonging and acceptance within their school community. They feel like when they go to school, they can be whoever they want to be, right? And so each of these pillars, okay, what does that look like within that? So how can we do that? We can build consistent trusting connections. It's not enough to just, hey, saw you last week. How's today? It's every morning. Hey, how was yesterday? I'm sick of you saying hi to me every morning. Well, get used to it because it's going to keep happening. I've had kids tell me that. But it's consistent, right? I was consistent. They knew as soon as they got off that bus, I was the first person that was going to be like, you good? Temp check. Weekly check-ins, champion advisor models, relationship audits, that relationship mapping thing, y'all, if you have never seen it or haven't looked at it, that should be the one thing that you take away, if anything. That relationship mapping is one of the most powerful and just profound. Identify and close those relationship gaps. And then the impact. This is the most cited intervention by kids as meaningful. Our kids are telling us this is what they want, but we're still trying to figure out what they need. Make it make sense, y'all. Peer two, that peer belonging. Pillar two, creating spaces for students to find their people. So again, it's one thing to have the same type of basketball, your normal athletics. Maybe your after school program is art, and art can be all encompassing. It's not just ceramics or pottery. It's, you want to throw paint on a canvas, do it. You want to host a D&D group, do it. Build structures where students can show up as their full selves and build those peer networks. The lunchroom, gone are the days where the lunchroom is the only spot that kids can connect and be with each other. Okay, after school things have to be part of that culture, because when students feel part of a group, they show up and they stay engaged. The reason they show up in classrooms is because they feel part of that community. Pillar three, meaningful engagement, centering student voice and instructional design, asking kids, what do you want to do? What do you want to learn about today? And then making that connection to real life. And then the other part of this, that meaningful engagement, is also having mirrors in their content and engagement. Because if kids don't feel like they see themselves either physically or background wise in anything that you're doing, or feel like it's safe to bring that background into it, they're not going to learn. They need to see themselves in that work to stay engaged. And then finally, safe and inclusive environment, creating those spaces where students feel safe, seen, and supported. De-escalation areas, we had a focus room area. So like our kids could, I need to focus, like focus. And they could take 10 to 15 minutes tops to just like cool down. If they needed longer, that's when I got involved, that tier 2 that we had built in. And then we did have a sensory room for our day treatment program that was as blue as Eiffel 65 could make it. Okay. Very like comforting and calming. And I mean, I liked hanging out in it. And then designing for inclusion through policies and practice. This goes back to our attendance conversation with, our attendance policies at schools relevant for the population? Are they meeting students and families where they're at? That's part of that safe and inclusive environment. Climate matters. Every space sends a message. if you could see my walls, there's a lot of mountains and things on it. And so like for me, mountains are where my heart sings. And so like my climate, my home has a lot of green, a lot of mountain looking things, because for me, like that space that sends that safe message for me, right? If kids walk into a room or into a school and it's like, there's no art, there's no like it's just, or the adults aren't engaging, talking, y'all know what it's like. So with the remaining little bit here, I cut out a little bit, I pivoted. And so we have two final questions that we would like to ask you all to engage and hear more. And the first one is, what pillar do you feel needs more attention in your school, district, or region?
And
And
I've dropped those pillars in the chat for you to reference again.
thank you so much. So what pillar of those four do you feel needs more attention in your school, district, or region? Or if you feel, you can say state, whatever you want.
Yeah, feel free to unmute yourself.
In my case, in Greenup County, it's probably the tier one, the student to adult relationship. The parents, if they're have custody of the children, frequently have to leave before the children get on the school bus. And frequently the parents are either in prison or in rehab, and a grandparent who raised a parent who ended up in prison or rehab is now raising the grandchildren. And sad to say, I know of at least one case where the grandparent probably caused more problems for the child than the child ever could have caused for the grandparent. She would call the police on the child, have the child, this is more of a juvenile justice kind of thing, claim the child assaulted her. The child would be removed from her home. And then at her detention hearing, she would turn around and say she wanted the child at home because she needed help at home. And she did this to more than one grandchild. And, there was no real relationship between the grandmother and the grandchildren. But mom and dad were definitely out of the picture between manslaughter convictions and then later meth addictions. They were definitely unsuitable to have custody of children.
Thank you, one, for sharing that, and two, for bringing light and shedding light on something that I did not say, which is that these pillars are not just for school staff and students, right? Like we're talking about, yes, it's school connectedness, but it's all of that, the adult and student relationship, right? That family, the familial relationship at home has just as much, if not more, impact. So thank you so much for sharing. Pillar 2, safe and inclusive. Pillar 5, pillar 4, I believe all pillars are very important. Yes, in theory, right? If all of these pillars are being met, right? If students feel connected when, pillar 1, 2, 3, 4, if there was a way to design a student success system, y'all, that encompassed all of those, can you just imagine how much more vibrant our kids would be, how much more vibrant our communities would be, more connected to one another? And so what we want to ask and flip back is, take it away, y'all. What is one idea, an insight maybe, or an action step from today's session that you plan to incorporate or pass along? And and sometimes, we attend these and it's, we take a lot of information, very saturated. I know we've thrown a lot at you. We've talked a lot, we've shared a lot, and we've heard from you. But just want to kind of give you all a moment, if you will, to take it all in, to just process. And if there's anything that stuck out to you, we would love to hear.
Well, I wish the school districts in the county where I practice had a way for the parents to drop the children off before school started, before even school breakfast was offered. But it's not going to happen in this decade, I would say, especially with the funding cuts that are coming down the road, and we've got tenured teachers who are being laid off because their school districts are not going to get enough money to pay them. They're certainly not going to be able to use the money for something like that.
Yeah.
Are there, Charles, you're in Greenup County, correct?
Yes.
Are there any like 24-hour childcare that maybe could get subsistence for something like that?
None that I'm aware of
Okay.
in Greenup County, or even in Boyd County, which is substantially larger population than Greenup County.
Right. Yeah, I know that was 24-hour childcare was a big thing in Cleveland, but obviously that's a bigger market with a lot of different factories, like the steel yards going second and third shifts consistently. But I had a lot of students that would be dropped off, and then the child cares would bring them to the schools.
Well, of course, other than the hospital, which is a shift work kind of environment, you've got Walmart, which is one of the larger employers now, sad to
Yeah.
say. And they have people working all hours of the day. The convenience stores, you know, a lot of the parents of my kids aren't able to get a better job. And frankly, Walmart is probably the best job they could get. And a lot of them, unfortunately, are settling for working at a convenience store. And you never know what your hours are going to be at something like that. And it's below subsistent living. And that's another problem we're going to run into of funding cuts for things like AFDC and SNAP and on down the line. It's going to be very difficult for our kids and the parents who are, at least in Greenup County, held responsible for getting the kids to school.
And I
Right.
believe that I totally agree with everything Charles has to say. He seems to be working with the same environment of children that I work with, where their parents are either incarcerated or not active, or the poverty level is so extreme. And it's going to get worse. I totally agree with everything he's saying.
And I want to also say that I live in Knox County, and so there are no 24-hour daycares. And even with people who have jobs, not just at Walmart and things like go to the hospital, they have to be at work at 7 in the morning. There's no daycare for them. So some of these kids, and speaking like my nephew, he didn't feel that he had to go to school because his parents was already at work, and unfortunately, or fortunately, however you want to look at it, he had a car, and he could get himself to school, but he chose not to. But then there were other kids in the same area. If they live 20, 30 miles from the school, the high school, they miss the bus. They're not getting to school because there's no transportation. We have no public transportation at all, and a large segment of my region is that way. If they miss the bus, even if they had good intentions to get there, you miss the bus, you miss the bus.
Yeah, I think that's a problem that we see across all demographics. I'm a single mom, and I had to be at school before my son had to be at school. And, you know, he had to check in with me. You know, that was our check-in, because when he decided not to go for a little bit, like we had a check-in, like you text me when your butt's getting on the bus and sitting down, right? But again, if there's not that accountability, or if a parent is on a, you know, working somewhere and they can't check their phone or check in with their kid or whatever, you guys are bringing up real problems that everybody across the state and the nation, frankly, are facing. And I appreciate your thoughts, and like Ashley, I'm taking notes, because we all have to work together, all the systems, right, to help the kids. And as Charles, as you alluded to, like the opportunities for work are becoming slimmer and slimmer, right? And like for my father's from Harlan County, and when he was growing up, it was either you went to the coal mines or you didn't have a job. And so my father chose to go into the Air Force to get the military in order to be able to pay for him to go on to school later. If not, he would not have had those economic opportunities. So I think we're shifting and we need to think about those things. I know with my seniors, one of the things I did was sit down with each of them and create an action plan. What are you going to do this year to prepare yourself for life after high school? What are the things that you need? And it wasn't college. It wasn't, but some of them did, but mostly it was, what trade are you going to get? What school or more training are you going to get? What job are you going after? Let's build that resume. Let's get you those skill sets to move forward. And I think we have to be thinking about all of those things with our students. Ashley, I'm sorry. I know we need to wrap up.
No, you're fine. I had a hand raise and I'm just so, one, I apologize that we didn't pause sooner to be able to have more time to have that conversation. So that is definitely, we're always growing. But I do want to make sure that you all know how to get in touch with us if by, the grace, and Amanda, I do want to address your question first. Just want to put this up here. This is a QR code that when you scan it takes you to a bookings page. No, it doesn't reserve you. Like, you don't have your spot in line with a restaurant or anything. That would be cool. But this is our Persistence to Graduation team bookings link. So you scan it and it shows you just all the different things that we offer. We like to talk. So just chit chats, trainings, all of our trainings are on there. If that's something based on where you're at, that was something that you'd be looking into. But then our contact information is also available there. And we just want to make sure that we stay connected. I know that there are times where people say that and then they don't follow up with that, but I hope that you can feel that we're very intentional with what this work looks like for us, because this is our life. Like, we're bringing that perspective and that lived experience into this for you all. So just really looking forward to seeing where that takes us. And Amanda, please share with the whole
I
group
do
what
want
you
to
got.
say another barrier I've seen, and I understand the schools they're doing stuff for the safety of all students on campus, but in a way, it's created a disconnect between the community and the school. We don't see the room moms in the rooms no more. We don't see, we've got dads that are retired or grandfathers that would love to walk the halls and connect with the kids. There's some programs that we'd really, I think, benefit if they were implemented correctly. And unfortunately, I know they've tried in the past, and some districts just didn't roll them out in the way they needed to be. But we really need to see some of that again. These kids need some parents, grandparents, community partners in those halls with them. They need to know that they're loved and supported from all wrap around with them.
Absolutely. And I love that. Yeah, it takes a village, right? It takes more than the teachers and the school administrators. It takes everybody involved. And yes, absolutely.
I always tell my kids that I work with, I'm not your mom, but I am a mom, and I'm here if you need me.
Meet them where they're at. Meet them where they're at.
Another barrier, and Ms. Dubert and I probably both remember this. Grade school kids would bring their pocket knives to school and show off to their friends and play mumbly peg. I'll let you all Google that later to see what it is. Now you bring a pocket knife to school, the school bans you from returning to school.
Right.
And then you're forced into, around here it's called Ashland Day treatment, but one of the delinquent quote unquote schools where, just like jail is a place to go to get more education on how to break the law, sometimes these type of schools can be the same thing. And there needs to be, I'm not sure how to draw that line. Obviously, we don't want kids bringing firearms to school, but maybe more degrees of discipline if things like that are done, rather than off with your head the first time that you violate a policy.
Absolutely. And I understand what you're saying. I come from a district that if you bring a weapon on campus of any kind, it's automatic 1 year in an alternative placement. And sometimes it's that kid that forgot that they had that knife on them because they live in a terrible area of town where safety is a problem. Or sometimes it's we had a kid that had was autistic and had a knife that was really cool looking and wanted to show his friends and didn't realize that that was a problem, but it was still like a 1-year placement. And I feel like we have to have those conversations too. So thank you for bringing that up.
And this is a generational thing, of course, but when I went to high school, there would be kids would park their pickup trucks with their deer rifles in a rack on the back, right behind the driver's side door. And, you know, you would probably have a SWAT team called out now if something like that happened.
Yep. I know some people are going ahead and leaving. I did drop some websites in the chat. That's our chronic absenteeism website. It's filled with resources. Also, our dropout prevention and persistence to graduation webpage also has a lot of resources that we talked about or links to them. And please check those out. And as Ashley said, you can do the Microsoft bookings. Our emails are on there, and we would love to continue having conversations with y'all. If that is virtual or in person, we don't mind driving. So
No, we do not.
yeah.
We will come meet you in person.
Yeah. So if you need us, and I know we need to turn this back over to Vanessa, but thank you all for being on here today. We really appreciate all your thoughts and giving up part of your beautiful Friday morning to sit with us and learn with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you all for joining us today. A huge thank you to Ashley and Lisa for sharing this amazing information with us. I don't know about you guys, but I took about 7 pages of notes. My challenge to you all, if you're part of a REAC, is to share this information with your REAC. There have been so many things mentioned that can help to either prompt or support conversation and or actions in your region regarding how to support attendance or just in general how to support youth. And if you're not part of a REACT, my ask is that you consider joining one. And before I say my next thing, let me just ask, are you guys available to share your slides with me that I can share out to everybody that registered?
Yes, I will download it as a PDF if that's okay.
Okay, thank you. That would be fine. As a reminder, please complete your evaluation. That link is listed in the chat box. I'll also be sending a follow-up email to everyone that registered. And so we'll include the PDF that Ashley just mentioned. It'll also include some additional information with their contact stuff and then the session evaluation. So also want to say that although this is our very last REACT Learning Series session, you've heard me say that a couple of times, we do hope that you will continue to learn with us and stay involved in Kentucky's system of care efforts by viewing and sharing the REACT resources and trainings channel. I'll include that in that follow-up email as well. And also, consider joining your regional interagency councils if you haven't done that yet. So that's all I have. Thanks again for joining us today. Thanks to our wonderful presenters, and I hope you have a great weekend.
Thank you.